It has been quite the tumultuous week for balanced druid players in Season of Discovery, and this is due to the new runes that were added, the Eclipse and the Dreamstate Rune, as well as a massive PvP nerf to Starsurge, which affects our PvE performance as well, and then a massive PvE buff to Starsurge, increasing our Starfire damage by a pretty huge amount. However, with all of these changes, the rotation has been like all up in the air. It's been changing every single day. So I've been wanting to make this video for a few days now, but I think things have settled down now to the point where I can share what I believe to be the optimal rotation for PvE, with some help from the Balance Druid Discord as well, because everyone's kind of been number crunching as well on there. So just a spoiler for the video ahead, the Balance Druids had a very complicated rotation with trying to manage your Eclipse stacks. However, now with the recent changes to Starsurge, it's kind of made the rotation very, very simple, very structured. So if you like that type of gameplay, then you'll like the new Balance Druid. However, I do kind of miss the stack manipulation kind of dynamic rotation that we had before. However, hopefully things change. Maybe they'll edit the way the rotation works again. If they do, I'll make sure to include it in my comprehensive PvE guide that I'll be releasing in a couple weeks or within a week. I'm not sure how much time I'll have, but that'll be coming very soon. So if you find the guide helpful, you can like the video, drop a sub, and comment any questions you have down below, or catch me live at twitch.tv/auto_wow. And yeah, let's just jump straight into the video. I'll also be going over the Weakauras that I'm using now, which includes my updated Weakaura that tracks the timers of the Nature's Grace proc, the Dreamstate proc, your Eclipse stacks, as well as the new Starfire proc from your Starsurge, as well as a new add-on that I use to also help track the Eclipse stacks, which just helps me visualize everything. That'll be quickly put in at the end of the video. Before we go over the rotation, I'll also be going over the new runes and rune changes that we received this phase, just to quickly go over how that affects everything. Starting with the Eclipse Rune, which is the most impactful rune that we have, as well as the most fun rune. It's really interesting how you're weaving in Starfires and Wraths to increase the effectiveness of both of them. Before we weren't even using Starfire, and now we will be using it quite a bit more, which means our mana will also be a bit more intensive than it was before as well. So the way Eclipse works is, for every Starfire you cast, you increase the critical strike chance of your next 2 Wraths by 30% each, and every Wrath cast reduces the cast time of your next Starfire by 1 second. Now that doesn't stack up, it's just 1 second per... It's 1 second per Starfire cast, so it's not like up to 4 seconds for 4 stacks, it's just 1 second per Starfire cast. And besides that, it also reduces your pushback by 70% for both of those spells, which is really nice quality of life, which has been fixed because it was bugged before, but now it's working properly. So this rune is very interesting. It worked well with Starsurge because Starsurge gains that 30% crit buff from the Wrath, and it also generates both stacks as well. So it'll generate 1 Lunar Eclipse, it will consume 1 Wrath Eclipse, but then it will also generate 2. So you'll get a positive of 1 Solar Eclipse stack every time you cast Starsurge. So that's why you always want to make sure you have at least 1 stack of Solar Eclipse before you cast Starsurge to get that 30% crit as well. It used to be bugged and it used to give Starsurge a 60% crit modifier. However, that has also been fixed and now it's back to 30% as it should be. It's still nice though that Starsurge does interact with this rune as well. The second rune that we received this phase is the Dreamstate Rune, which causes our spell critical strikes to put a debuff on the target that increases all nature damage taken by the target by 20% for 12 seconds, and it gives yourself a buff that increases your mana regen by 50% while casting for 8 seconds. So it's important to note that this is a debuff on the target, so it can be resisted. However, with our crit rate, we will be reapplying it very often. And it also increases all nature damage taken by the target. So all your rogues, your shamans and stuff like that are dealing extra nature damage will be getting a buff. So this does increase our raid utility and support DPS capability. So Dreamstate is nice. However, now our rotation is also like more closely weighted towards arcane damage. So that 20% nature damage does not affect everything that we do, which is a bit unfortunate. However, it's still a DPS increase and you can't really complain. And then finally there's the massive changes to Starsurge, whereby they've reduced the base damage by a ton as well as the spell power scaling, and added a bonus effect of increasing the damage dealt by our next Starfire by up to 80%. And this was done to shift the power of the spell from an instant cast high damage nuke to more of like a setup spell, which like buffs our next Starfire, which we were already kind of casting. However, now this means that we're going to have to cast at least one Starfire in between each Starsurge, which is more than we were before. It's going to mean our rotation is quite a bit more mana intensive, so be prepared to bring mana pots and stuff like that, because we're going to be using quite a bit more mana in our fights, especially if we're moving, because then we'll be using our dots as well. So yeah, Starsurge is pretty good, but it's different to how it used to be before. Moving on to the rotation part of the video, you will notice that our rotation is quite simple now. It's probably even more simple than it was in phase 1. Very structured, it's very samey. However, any fight that has movement can add a bit extra to it. I'll also be going over some ways you can kind of min-max a bit of extra damage as well. You want to start the rotation off by pre-casting a Starfire 3 seconds before the end of the pull timer into a Starsurge immediately on the pull. Now it's important to note that you want to delay this first Starsurge by just a split second while you wait for the Starfire to land, generating your solar Eclipse stacks, giving our Starsurge that 30% increased chance to crit. Now this isn't necessarily required, however you will lose out on that 30% crit if you Starsurge too quickly after that initial Starfire on the pull. After that, you want to immediately Starfire again to use up that proc that you received from the Starsurge, then use 2 Wraths, and then Starsurge again, and then repeat. So that is the new single target rotation. You're probably wondering, where is the Moonfire, where is the Sunfire, where are our dots, what is happening? And unfortunately, with how things are right now at least, the 2 dots that we have don't really add any DPS, and Moonfire in particular kind of is a DPS loss to maintain. Now that doesn't mean you never have to use them. You can still keep them keybound for any time you have to move. You can cast Sunfire while you're moving and your Starsurge is on cooldown. You can Sunfire, and if you need to move again and your Sunfire is up and your Starsurge is still on cooldown, then you would use Moonfire, but that is a very niche situation. I wouldn't imagine having to cast Moonfire very much. Now something important to note with that is that you will be using a lot more mana if you're having to constantly move and use your dots and Starfire. So keep in mind that the more you're moving, the more mana you're using, and the more you might have to use a mana pot if the fight goes on too long. So that's just something to keep in mind. You can also melee weave in between each instant cast spell that you cast, so any Starsurge or Moonfire or Sunfire. If you have a weapon that's faster than 1.5 seconds of swing speed, then you can get a melee attack in between each global as well. So that's a little bit extra damage you can do. With the dismantle weapon enchant, you can also get a bit of extra damage with that as well. Just to end the video off, I'll quickly be going over the new Weakauras that I'm using. It's only 2 that is required. You don't even need either of them. You can also tailor them to how you feel is best. And so the first Weakaura that I use is just the balance timers that I've made. You'll see that it tracks the solar eclipse stacks on the side. Also tracks your Starsurge cooldown and the duration of the buff you get from Starsurge to increase the damage of your next Starfire. Also tracks your dot timers, your fairy fire uptime. If you get a crit, you'll get Dreamstate as well, Nature's Grace, all that stuff. So that is this Weakauras right here, the auto balance timers. I'll put the description down below, the link for this stuff. This is all things that it tracks, so you can delete any of these if you don't want to track any of that. And then I also use Tic Tac's Eclipse Pips. I did delete the lunar eclipse portion of this because I only need to track the solar eclipse stacks. I don't think you need to track lunar eclipse. You get overcapped on that anyway, and it doesn't really provide you with any benefit. So you'll see here in the middle of my screen, these little bubbles, they really help me track the amount of stacks that I have if I want to overcap or not. Although with our new rotation, you don't really need to manage your stacks as much as you did before. If anything changes, obviously it's nice to be able to track your solar eclipse stacks for when you need to refresh those. So yeah, that's what I use. That brings us to the end of the video, and I want to thank you guys again for watching. All forms of support are appreciated, and I really appreciate all the support I've received so far as well. When it comes to the Balanced Druid guide, the full comprehensive one, I'll probably be releasing that sometime either within next week or the week after. I still need to get all the information regarding stat priors and gear and what is actually best, but I will be doing my Gnomeregan raid guide ASAP first. So expect that very soon. And yeah, hope you guys enjoy your day, and I'll see you in the next video.